Honestly, that was the worst. It was like 2 weeks before.
I'd like to call the May 4th, 2022 meeting of the Municipal Building Commission to order. Jeremy, I think we have to call the roll because Mike is remote. So would you go ahead and do that?
Terry.
Here.
Ed.
Here.
Jackie.
Here.
Gail.
Here.
Jerry.
Here.
Mike.
Here.
Andrew.
Here.
Jay.
Here.
And Jack.
Here.
Full house.
Yes, we do. We have a very full house. Excellent. Okay. Because Jeremy likes to call the roll, is there a motion to approve the April 6th minutes?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Jeremy?
Terry.
Yes.
Ed.
Yes.
Jackie.
Yes.
Gail.
Yes.
Jerry.
Yes.
Mike.
Yes.
Andrew.
Yes.
Jay.
Yes.
Jack.
Yes, passes unanimously. All right, then next we probably should go to Mark Zawatsky.
Good evening.
Welcome to the meeting. Which project would you like to talk about first?
The fire department roof, as I reported at the last meeting, and I'll just recap, substantial completion was issued on March 9th. The manufacturer performed an inspection on April 14th, and there was a small punch list identified. The vast majority of those items have been completed, and we are waiting for the manufacturer to issue the warranty and for the contractor to issue all the closeout documents. We had hoped to have that complete package submitted to the city prior to the end of April so that the contractor could build their remaining $28,000 balance. That did not occur. So we expect that that will be completed during the month of May so that we can finally close this project out. So before I move on to the school department and the gym floors, I'm happy to entertain any questions.
Any questions for Mark on this project?
No.
Hearing none.
Okay, so moving on to the schools.
Yep.
So I will share two pictures. One in succession. This is the logo for the Hill Roberts Center Court. They're the Huskies, and this has been approved by the school department team, and that will be the logo of Center Court for that one. And the Hawks, they are Hyman 5. This one will be at the Center Court of the Hyman 5 gymnasium floor. So the
Looks a little bit like Foghorn Leghorn.
Yeah, well, it might be a chicken hawk or a hokey hawk if you ever went to Virginia Tech. But that's the picture that appears all over the school, so they're going with it.
Okay.
So again,
so where are we on this?
We executed contract. We have all the bodies submitted to the city, and a bona fide purchase order has been issued by purchasing. I thank Jeremy for forwarding all that information back, and the architect and contractor have that now. So regarding the submittal process, it was requested, once they saw the color charts, it was requested by the school department to have two colors. One on the field or inside basketball court line felt, and the perimeter a different color. We asked the architect issued a proposal request, PR number 1. The contractor went back to the manufacturer, looked at what it was going to take, and relative to race in two colors, and they came back and they submitted a change order request or a response to PR number 1, and Jeremy has presented that to you for your consideration. So it's my understanding that we have the money within the budget, and it's a request of the school department, and the total cost is just over $20,000. So $10,000 per building. So the question is it the will of the Municipal Building Commission to authorize that?
Mark, you don't have a picture of what it would look like, do you?
No, I don't have a picture. The colors haven't been finalized. There was just an initial request. I asked the architect for his submission. I think that the Hawks, given that orange color, we're looking to have an orange perimeter in the 8 or 10 feet perimeter around the gymnasium floor. And a different color, I think a little bit more muted gray at the Hill Roberts School. I do not have the graphics of it yet. That would be part of the submittal process should the MDC approve the change order request.
And would this define the inbounds and out of bounds? Is that what we're looking at?
Exactly. It creates a walking path, or it creates a visual separation between what is in play or in the basketball court and what is outside the court.
I think referees would find that helpful.
Are the courts gonna be, were they gonna be lined anyway? So this is just a contrasting inbounds and out of bounds, more of an aesthetic, because the school department's requesting it, and is 20 grand what they were thinking the extra cost would be? Is it just material, or is there extra labor?
There is extra labor, so obviously this was not part of the contract documents. We may have received slightly better pricing had it been part of the contract documents. So all change orders are usually at a slightly higher cost. But it's my understanding that this will require additional labor as well as 2 colors to be run, so a little bit of extra waste and or all the things that go into providing a gymnasium floor that's 7,488 square feet in 2 colors rather than 1. Yes, the courts are fully lined for both basketball, volleyball, and a number of other sport opportunities for the kids. The center court logo was part of this, so it's set up to be a multi-purpose gymnasium that is in keeping with all the needs of the elementary schools that are past and in the past, present, and into the future. And this is, like I said, a request of the school department. It is not an absolute requirement for the court itself. The old court was just a single color, so this is clearly an observed need that was not previously communicated.
Need or want.
Any questions or comments beyond what Andrew had?
I mean, if it's just an aesthetic, I mean, to me, it's a good 20 grand could be spent somewhere else.
So on the budget piece, so this fits well within the budget, but we had a bond authorization to do the middle school roofs, which was amended to do the elementary school floors. So this $20,000 we don't have on hand right now, so it would be a cost avoidance. It would just be $20,000 that we didn't borrow at the end of the project.
Or pay taxes on.
Still 20 grand. Doesn't pay.
Would it come
doesn't
out of
matter where
the-
it comes from.
Would it come out of the school budget or?
No, it'd come out of the
City
bond.
budget.
Yeah, so all debt is paid out of the general fund,
Okay.
and we haven't borrowed this in full yet. So once we go to borrow, we borrow $4 million, or we borrow $4 million, $4,020,000,
21.
and then pay interest on $20,000.
So it ends up being more than 20 grand. When you
Well,
put the financing
yeah.
into it.
If you look at it over 20 years, it's more than 20 grand.
Mhm.
And the next question would be, do we have similar kinds of floors at Studley, or do we have wood at a place like Studley? Or Willett? Because I think Willett's got wood.
It's wood.
So these are the only ones, if I remember right, of the elementary schools that have the this type of flooring. The other schools probably have wood.
And we're not looking for the floor to be there for 20, 30 years, when we've already mentioned that the buildings are, we're trying to maintain the floors and repair them, but it's not a long term solution.
I think that's an excellent point. We're hoping to replace these schools in the 15 to 20-year time frame, because they're already 1975. So that's 47 years. So I kind of feel like not spending the money, but what's the sense of the commission?
I think it's not a need. Somebody said need a few minutes ago. It's not a need, it's a want.
Right.
And I don't think it's necessary.
Yeah, I mean, if
Especially with the years, we're looking at the years, the amount of money, the bonding. I don't think so. I think the logo's cute. That's new. That's something
well, the
extra.
logo is going to be there
And
anyway.
that's part of it. And that's all part of the deal. I think just having two-tone colors around, I don't think it's necessary.
Okay, did you have an opinion?
What's the total cost of the floors to start?
The contract is $448,977.
450 grand.
So
So it's not-
10% would be
little bit
44,
under-
so
little bit under 5.
A little bit under 5%.
Which is a fairly significant percentage if you look at it that way, in my mind.
When we haven't started yet. And they haven't started the work yet either.
Yeah, so this material hasn't been released or anything like that. It's
Right.
Right, so we're waiting for this decision this evening in order to respond to the contractors so that once the architect approves the submittal package, they can release the order with the manufacturer to meet our aggressive timeline, which is to start this project at the end of June and be complete for the early to middle part of August.
Yeah, so you'll have a vote very shortly. So I think a motion would be in order to approve, because all motions have to be in the affirmative, but making the motion or seconding it doesn't commit you to vote for it.
Okay, so we are moving to approve the request of change order request number 1 in the total of $20,580.
Second.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Why don't we take a roll call vote, Jeremy?
Terry,
No.
Ed,
yes.
Jackie,
No.
Gail,
No.
Jerry,
No.
Mike,
Yes.
Andrew,
No.
Jay,
No.
and
odd.
Jack.
No. And the
Seven.
tally is
7-2.
2 in favor, 7 opposed. The motion fails.
That is the first failed motion I've had in 2 years supporting either this or this.
See, we're a very agreeable group usually.
So Jack, if I could have a follow-up question about the logo.
Sure.
I hate being remote. Nobody hears me. So I don't want to get on, so it's a question more for Mark, and I'm not getting, again, on the hardwood floors, but usually when the hardwood floors are put in, when you're dealing with logos or border striping, the logos are put on the floor before it's actually finished and it's probably urethane over. How are these done since it's a multi-use court surface, if you will?
It's a great question, and I'd love to get back to you full and complete details, but it's my understanding that the camera-ready art is provided to the manufacturer. They take the digital files and they superimpose this onto the surface of the court material so that it is monolithic and complete and actually part of the court itself, not a surface applique. But I do want to 100% double check that, and should I discover any information to the contrary, I would certainly report back. But my understanding is this logo is actually integral into the basketball court, the same as other aspects or elements of it. I do know that the lines are actually painted on, similar to a court, and that there is a portion of the lines that is an actual physical paint.
So that's a good question, Mike, because if it was an applique that could start peeling up after a year, it would seem like we wouldn't want it. It would be better to stick it on the wall than to stick it on the floor. So Mark, could you get back to us on that?
I certainly will, and that was part of the submittal questions by Arno and the CBI Submittal Chapter team.
Thank you, Mark.
But thank you, Mike, for bringing it up.
All right, is there anything else we need to know about this project?
No, I'm waiting for the overall project schedule. I've been in communication with Jeremy. I've generally copied him to be a good communicator to him as a conduit to the MDC. So everything at this point appears on schedule, on budget, and that we're going to be able to achieve success with this project within the requested timeline. Obviously, we previously discussed the removal of the existing floors, how that's going to be done. We're going to be sealing off the mechanical system in the existing gymnasiums, and it's all part of the contract documents, so as not to interfere with any summer programs or summer staff that are in the existing buildings. These gyms will be fully isolated and separated from the rest of the school buildings. So at this point, it's looking good.
You just reminded me of a headline that we saw the other day from one of the Boston television stations. We've started the demolition over at the new old high school. And
The existing high school.
yeah, the existing high school.
That's right.
And so the headline on the story was that demolition had started with children in the building.
Yeah, I saw that.
So, which was actually a true statement, just a very misleading statement.
Right.
Okay.
So,
So
anybody have any other questions for Mark?
So Mark, you don't anticipate any supply chain issues with ordering the floor or anything?
That's correct. When the contractor we had a kickoff, so let me go back. On April
Okay.
18th, we had an overall project kickoff meeting with all the team members and participants. And we discussed all the contractual requirements, we discussed the timeline, and the contractor has been assured by the manufacturers of this flooring that they can meet the schedule and that they don't have any supply chain issues that will adversely impact the schedule. That's the information we had in April, that's the information I presented this evening, and should anything change, obviously we work very, very hard to avoid that, but as I said earlier, it's looking good so far.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Mark, our next meeting looks to be June 1st. So,
Okay, June 1.
yeah, why, did you want to see us before then?
No, I don't think we have a need for that. I'm just thinking about contractor requisitions or end of month documents. So I'll make sure that we get that in the week prior so that I get it over to Jeremy with enough time for them to communicate it to your commission.
Okay, thank you.
Or to the commission, not your commission. Sorry.
It is our commission. All right, thank you very much, Mark.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
You too.
You too.
Thank you. Take care.
All right, Jeremy, where are we on the library and the HVAC?
Both that and the grass seed in the front. It's become so the HVAC, it's not an issue right now having cold rooms just because of the weather, but the core issue hasn't been solved. I've been trying to schedule with Amy, the library director, and Evan Warner, our OPM, an additional site visit. We haven't been able to get him on site, so we're trying to schedule that still. So it's not a comfort problem for them just because of the weather outside, but it's something we need to get fixed before we can think about closing out the project.
And I know their bill is only $522, but my inclination is not to pay it tonight. it's a very small message, I understand, but, you know, this has gone on too long, right?
So yeah, I mean, this is for time that has already been worked. Our issue is that more time needs to be worked. So this is for labor that's already been, expended by the firm, but for how much we have paid them, for how much this is, I don't think it would be the worst not to, but it is for work that's already been done.
Andrew?
Another question, I can't remember how it was left off. Wasn't there sealing or grouting of the front steps that needed to be performed? And
So that was outside of Track's, the GC. It was outside of their contract. We had already pushed past a percentage of the contract that purchasing and accounting were comfortable with. So that we are not going to close our bond authorization, and we can still procure and do that work separately. But that's going to happen within the project, just outside of the current contracts.
okay, so it was never included as part of their original scope, and I think there was a proposal, but it was a crazy proposal that they had provided.
They were using like the historic preservation mason, and it would have cost $40,000 or
And
something like that.
But that item still hasn't been. It still needs to
We
be
need to
corrected.
procure someone to do it at a reasonable price, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was asking.
So will you follow up on that?
Certainly.
Okay. Any other questions on the library? Moving on, the Attleboro Pawtucket Water Interconnect.
Yeah, so we had a walkthrough, some water department staff, myself, the engineer from CDM Smith, who is not the engineer from CDM Smith who has been working on this for the past couple of years.
Thank God.
So we had a walkthrough on April
Can I
20th.
get an amen?
It's a gentleman named Matthew Pitta, who has worked on a number of wastewater projects in the city, so I'm
Yeah, he
familiar.
actually did a good job down at the, with the garage down there, if I remember right.
And I'm working with him on two separate wastewater projects at the moment. So we had a walkthrough on the 27th. We had 3 contractors there. Filed subbids are due on May 16th, with GC bids due on May 23rd. So the schedule right now is to have a recommendation for the June 1st meeting. We have some concerns with current supply prices fitting within the budget that we have for this. So we have to wait and see what things come in at. All 3 contractors at the walkthrough expressed concern with the timeline, just on ordering the valves and the gates and everything that's needed. They're being told very long timelines from their suppliers. So we may have to extend out the contract length once we have somebody under contract.
What else is new?
Well, that raises a question, though. Will they not bid if they think they're going to be held to timelines that they can't meet?
Which was a question I believe, I know was asked in person, I believe was being submitted via writing, so we can issue an addendum related to that. What I told the folks at the walkthrough was that we started this project in 2016, so if we need to add another 3 months for lead time, that seems reasonable from the
Yeah.
grant perspective.
A drop in the bucket.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would suggest that we follow up on this with Matt Pitta right away, because you don't want to end up with only 1 or 2 bidders, because people say, I know I can't meet this, and I don't want to bid on a contract, be forced to sign it, and then be begging for a change order.
Right. So yeah, I expressed our previous willingness to do $0 time extension change orders on a handful of projects recently. But again, that was just informal at the walkthrough. We should issue an addendum related to that.
Yeah, let's make sure we issue an addendum if it's appropriate in our engineer's judgment.
Would the contract documents have a Buy America clauses for the components, the valves and the gates? That if there is Buy America, could it be removed, or would it want to be removed to?
That came up. I don't think there is, because this is not being funded with federal money. This is local money, so I think we're okay.
I know sometimes if gates are coming from Canada, that could help, or I don't know if they get them from overseas, but
So we're about to start an ARPA-funded project in the wastewater department, which we'll probably run into that. But I'll check, but I'm not. I don't think that's it.
yeah, just if it helps keep costs down or expedites.
Andrew, you just reminded me of course, the question is what is American? Because the high school project, the steel was made in Alabama, shipped to Canada where it was fabricated, and then shipped back here. So is that American steel? Is that Canadian steel?
I'd say where was it? Where's the
Originated.
foundry? Where it comes from?
The foundry was in Alabama.
It's
They
American.
drove it past us.
On a German truck.
Yeah, hundreds of miles, and then they drove it back to us. So, but I think those are good points. Hopefully we'll have a good bidding climate, and on June 1st we'll have some recommendations from the architect. Will Matt Pitta be joining us either remotely or in person on that date?
I will ask. I do not know. I imagine one or the other.
Is there an architect's or engineer's estimate for the cost?
Yes,
Yes.
and it's not good.
I believe the bidding documents say something around 2 million, 1.9 million, and we have a budget of about 1.6 or 1.7 million.
Was there a estimate from years ago, or is it?
So the estimate is from 2015, 2016. We included a large contingency. We borrowed all of the money. So yeah, I don't know whether it was, extraordinary and unforeseen inflation in the recent 6 to 9 months. If the estimate didn't adequately include escalation regardless of recent inflation. I don't know, but I'm concerned that we will not have the budgetary authority to execute a contract after June 1st without some sort of outside funding source.
Would that be coming from retained earnings in the water department, Jeremy?
It conceivably could. It could come in the form of an additional bond authorization.
But this would all have to go through the city council and would not happen anytime quick, right?
Right, and ARPA is not a reasonable, the American Rescue Plan Act is not a reasonable funding source here because of the, there's all sorts of procurement guidelines you have to follow on. While the project would qualify under an allowable use, the procurement guidelines under using federal money are different than the state guidelines using local money. And we'll have already been through the procurement process, so we would then have to turn around and re-procure using all of the federal guidelines. So ARPA is not a reasonable choice.
So if the bids come in higher than the money we have, will we then have to reject all bids, seek extra money, and rebid the project?
We wouldn't have to reject all bids if they came in slightly higher. We could go to retained earnings. If we needed $100,000 in order to keep our contingency intact, we can go to retained earnings. If we needed $750,000, we can't. So the retained earnings piece we could reasonably do within 45 days and then accept a bid by the end of that. But if we need an amended bond authorization because we're way out, blew our estimate way out of the water, then I would have to talk with our engineer, but conceivably we would have to reject all bids, yes.
Is this already out on the street to bid on?
Yeah.
Does it make sense? Could it be pulled? Would we want to pull it?
Well, I think the price is only going to go up.
Right.
So if we get a reasonable bid that we can accept, with retained earnings being used by the end of, or the middle of July, then I think we're better off, because I'm afraid if we push this out to the fall, we're going to get even worse bids.
Mm-hmm. Retained earnings goes away on June 30th and doesn't get recertified until October, so we would have to do something within the month of June.
Okay.
What's the bid date?
May 23rd.
So the numbers will be available for June 1st meeting.
Yes.
Yeah, and we'll probably, at that point, well, Jeremy probably will already have talked to the mayor and to Courtney about where, you know, where we are financially, and he'll probably have some recommendations for us at that meeting, right?
Yeah, we will probably once we have the numbers, and if it's attainable to do out of retained earnings, we'll ready a communication item to send down and get the process started even in advance of MBC. And then should bids be rejected for whatever reason, we could just pull that item of business.
Okay. All right. Anything else on this project? City Hall envelope.
So not a ton on this, except that we had a kickoff meeting on April 15th with Russo Bar Architects. We sent them over some plans. They're gonna come out to the city. They were fitting it into their schedule. We don't have a date yet, but it should be it's a small contract right now. We'll obviously develop into a much larger project once we have an architect on board, but this is so we know what we need to ask for sort of project. So I'm hopeful we can wrap this up June or July, and then start the project in earnest in the fall.
Okay. And then finally, the public safety building.
Yes, so the RFQ went live on Monday. Proposals are due May 25th. We had a handful, probably 4 or 5 as of yesterday, architecture firms that were on the plan holders list. We of course have all the industry groups that you know, I don't care if they have it or not, but we had some actual vendors who have pulled the RFQ already. So my plan, the 525 is a Wednesday. My plan is to use the 6-1 meeting, your 6-1 meeting, to discuss proposals and shortlist candidates, and then call a special meeting at some point in June to bring your shortlist in to discuss.
And that's just for the needs assessment survey, is that correct?
Yeah, so I will circulate the RFQ to this group tomorrow. There are evaluation criteria in there with, you know, greater than 10 years experience in projects, highly advantageous, 5 to 10 advantageous, that sort of thing. We'll create a rubric and I'll send around the RFQ so you can read what it is we're asking for.
And then we having them submitted both electronically and in hard copy.
Yep.
And so once the 25th is rolled around, you'll send an email to us to remind us that if we want to pick up a hard copy, we can. And if you want it electronically, that you'll send it electronically.
Yeah, once we go through the process of compressing these massive files that architecture firms like to send us with CAD drawings and, you know, 1 million megs. But yes, we will have them both electronically and hard copy.
And so what we'll ask you all to do then is to look at these requests or these responses, which there could be 3 and there could be 30. And I would expect it's going to be a fairly high number and a competitive project. And so then what we'll need to do is to come prepared with your preliminary rankings, and then we will go through the process. Jeremy, I'm thinking that the Conservation Commission is not going to be happy if we're sitting here till 8 o'clock that night. So would we be meeting in the annex, or would we need to go on a road trip somewhere else? Do you need to talk to Jim Jones? Do you have any ideas as to what we should do?
Yeah, I think we can use any number of school spaces that would be available to us. I'll talk with Jim and see what makes sense for him, and I'll talk with Mark to see what makes sense for the school department. But you're right, I don't think we should be here on June 1st.
Yeah, I'm wondering if the Zito room might be an appropriate place for us to go, because we know that works for the technology, and we're familiar with how to get there. Which, by the way, we hope to see you all next Wednesday in the Zito room. So, I guess, other than paying bills, is that what we need to do tonight?
That's it for me.
So my suggestion is that we...
Sorry, one last thing on the public safety RFQ. just because we were talking about funding and not knowing where prices were coming in on the Attleboro Pawtucket Water Interconnect. On the public safety RFQ, the RFQ says the fee shall not exceed $200,000, and we have a capital projects fund set up with a $200,000 budget. So any proposal that comes in over $200,000 is non-compliant to the request and is not able to be considered. So we have the funding lined up already.
Right, but we can't open the envelopes until we rank them, right?
Right, but if we open, there's not the ability for us to open up the envelopes and to be in excess of our budget.
Right, so if we choose someone number one and they want 250, then we're gonna have to reject them and go to number two. It's just so everybody understands that.
But it's stated in the RFQ, the not to exceed price.
So they should understand that.
Yes.
They know what our budget is.
Yeah, so I would expect we get a lot of 190s.
199.
199.
Okay, so then, in terms of paying the bills, should we pay all three, or is there a
No.
motion just to pay two?
Just two, I think.
Okay.
Move to approve the first and the last, the gym floors and the fire department roofs.
Both for Mark Zawatsky. Terry, are you okay with that?
Yep, second.
Is there any discussion? Roll call vote?
Terry,
Yes.
Ed,
Yes.
Jackie,
Yes.
Gail,
Yes.
Jerry,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Andrew,
Yes.
Jay,
Yes.
Jack.
Yes. Unanimous. Okay, is there anything else we need to do at this point? I guess, the motion, it would be in order to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
6:07. Jeremy?
Terry,
Yes.
Ed,
Yes.
Jackie,
Yes.
Gail,
Yes.
Jerry,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Andrew,
Yes.
Jay,
Yes.
Jack.
We are adjourned. And we'll see you all next week.